CEO at the time used to talk about how, a startup is much like trying to change a tire as the car's moving.
All right, so we're back on the 6th, Sandy Cerami, with my man Double D Deshaun Drummond just showed up, and the man making the magic happen behind the camera, Hollywood Capone of Capone Studios, and we are with my good friend, Mr. Chris Lopez. He is a Marine veteran, and we're going to talk a little bit about going from preparing for war to becoming an entrepreneur and everything in between, because Chris has a great story to tell about the path that he took, a little bit unconventional. But let's pick up where we left off, which was, on the IRR, and now it comes to an end and you're going back into business. Talk to us what it was like going back into your old position.
Yeah, so I went back to the firm that I had left. Mm-hmm. My teammates were unbelievably supportive, and my boss as well. But I had that itch, Sandy, and the itch for me was doing something out on my own. Mm-hmm. I didn't know exactly what that looked like or felt like, and so I talked to a number of folks, and I decided to start with the passion first. That's what they say, right?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely.
So I started with baseball.
Yeah. So
I was looking at starting a baseball-related business.
Now, what did people tell you when you came up with that idea?
Everybody was fairly supportive. My brother probably gave me the best advice, and his advice was, don't be like everybody else. Create a business.
Right.
Do the work. Do the research.
Yeah.
Know what you're getting into. So I did. I spent probably 6 to 9 months speaking to batting cage owners all over the country who were real gracious with their time, and I couldn't get those numbers to work, and I decided that needs to go on the shelf.
Right.
That's just not going to happen. So I continued to think about other ideas. And
that's a great lesson, Chris. Yeah. I don't mean to interrupt you, but that's a great lesson for other entrepreneurs that are out there that are thinking about starting a business. You took the time to do the research, to do the math, I think a little bit of your military training preparation, and you did the math that just didn't add up. And so you were smart enough to lead with your head, not your heart, and you put that one on the shelf. Yeah. Difficult decision to make?
Difficult decision.
Yeah.
Difficult.
So what was the next move?
Next move was I got pulled out to be vice president of business development for a startup, and that was an awakening, because hair was on fire every day.
Yeah.
And I think our CEO at the time used to talk about how, a startup is much like trying to change a tire as the car's moving.
Right.
And he was right.
Great analogy.
Everybody was doing so many different things. And it was messy, but it also taught me, that was the situation, Sandy, that taught me a lot about cost management.
Okay.
We had a lot of money flying out the window and didn't know where it was going.
Right.
And I'd come into it about 2 years in, and so I didn't realize I was part of the turnaround. I didn't realize the shape we were in. Yeah. So it's pretty
much
painful.
Different story going through the interview process than when you actually
much different story.
Yeah. That happens a lot.
But we did turn it around. But one of the things we did was to wrap our arms around what were we spending money on. And it's not so much about revenue solving all problems.
Right.
There's several ways to solve problems.
No question. It's funny you mention that, because a lot of new businesses struggle with that. We think that we're going to sell our way out of whatever mess that we're in, and you look at it from a different perspective, where you see expense mediation and expense mitigation as being a big key to survival.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I think once we got our head wrapped around that stuff, which we had ignored, the business started to turn.
Right.
Because now the revenue, coupled with being a lot smarter with how we're spending money, we started to be a lot more profitable.
Yeah, there's an old saying that says money is easy to make and hard to hold on to.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So at probably 3 years in, I was looking at some business opportunities still. So it's probably 5 years now looking at opportunities. And I landed in a place that I didn't expect to, and that was in a franchise.
Okay.
So I really hadn't given much thought to franchise businesses. I always think about restaurants or things like. But I ran across a shipping consulting gig.
Okay.
Business to business, and selling against FedEx and UPS.
Okay.
As a partner of DHL. amazing international shipping business.
A little more nimble than the other two, right?
A lot more nimble.
Yeah, so some flexibility for you.
So I got to focus on the small to mid-sized businesses, and so I was able to develop some great relationships and go really deep with those, not just in small package, but other areas of shipping, with a focus to not just reduce cost, but really to improve the quality of service.
Right.
So that's what I did for 5.5 years. And I will tell you, my first year though, Sandy, I didn't think I was going to make it.
Right.
I got through, I think, to month 12, 13, and said, holy smokes, this is just not happening fast enough.
Tell me why you felt that way. Did you feel like it was time to just give in and give up?
I think my forecasting was a little off.
Okay.
I think I probably should have cut it in half one more time.
Okay, yeah. When in doubt, chop it in half.
Right. So, but it's like anything else. You stay the course. If you know you're doing the right things, you got the right activities, you got the right pipeline, and you're making modification where you need to. We came out of it.
Was there a point in time when you felt like maybe I need to pull the plug on this thing?
No, it was never that.
Okay.
I was just thinking I'd get to that point a lot faster. So I certainly I'm not the type to throw in the towel.
Right.
And that's probably the reason we turned the corner.
I love it.
Along with a lot of support from my wife. But we got through that, and it's amazing how things took off. We doubled in size by the time we hit probably close to year 2.5.
Okay.
And we kept growing.
What do you think was the key to your growth? Focus?
I think it was a lot of focus.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, you start a business and stay on.
Yeah.
You're that first year and a half is brutal.
There's no question.
It's not easy.
We talk about that very often with folks that are out there that are working for someone else.
Right.
And I'll get that question very often when I'm out consulting, and they'll say, I wish I could do what you do. And I'm sure you get those questions or those comments as well.
Right.
And I think the big surprise for folks, if they don't take that leap when you're trying to give them a little relative experience, when you tell them it's not quite that glamorous, like there's no guarantees.
Right.
You're going to take a shot. And then the folks that leap before they look and get out there and go, and I was one of those folks. I leapt before I really looked.
Right.
You realize that it takes 1.5 years to 2 years to really build something that's got some sustainability to it.
Absolutely.
Make sense?
It does. It does.
So talk to us. The business is starting to grow.
Yeah.
2.5 years in, you're starting to double in size. What was the most exciting thing happening at that point in time?
The most exciting thing was how those relationships were really taking off to the point where I was getting a lot of referral business.
Yeah.
And to me, that was an indication that I was doing business right.
Doing something right.
And I think my last year before I sold the business, I had over 20 referral businesses, and that's pretty uncommon in the arena.
Yeah, no question. And I'll tell you,
It's validation.
It is validation, Chris. I'm glad you said that because we preach all the time, especially in the automotive side of the business, about repeat and referral business.
Absolutely.
And how it's a validation of whether you're doing the right thing by your clients or not, or your customers, but that it's a great pipeline filler for you as well.
Yeah.
Talk to us about making the decision to sell the business. What was it that prompted you to sell it?
In that business that I shared with you, the startup, where things were kind of messy, we had a really great CFO.
Right.
And I remember learning so much from him, because when I went into that startup, one of the things I really wanted to take away was a better understanding of the financials of the business. I never had that exposure. Never saw a P&L, never saw a balance sheet. For me, I knew I had the operations management and sales down.
Right.
I was missing.
I could do the do.
Exactly.
Right.
And so that startup was instrumental in me really digging into the finances of a business. So I had a great CFO who said, whenever you get into a business, you should always know what your exit strategy is. It doesn't mean you have to be focused on that every single day, but you should know what's the lever that decides, hey, maybe it's time to move on. And I think, took away that over time in reading that the guy who starts a business is not necessarily the right person to keep it going.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great revelation, ultimately. And I love the fact that you started with the end in mind. Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind. I think that's critical because it does give you a little bit of direction in terms of when it's time to say it's time, right?
Absolutely.
And most business owners don't have that luxury because they haven't planned for it. But again, your military training coming into play there, having that plan in place before going. You sold the business successfully.
I did.
And tell me what it was like post-sale. Was there a little bit of a deflation period after that? I mean, did you feel like, wait, what's next, or what happened?
You feel a little lost after you turn over the reins.
Yeah, no question. Did you have a contract to stay on?
No.
Okay,
Actually, no. I take that back. Yes, customer service stayed on, and we had an admin stay on.
Okay.
But I will tell you, I could not have sold it to a better person. I sold it to a friend within the Inexpress franchise system, and she did exactly what I hoped she would. She doubled the business,
Great.
which is perfect for both of us.
Yeah, no question. No question.
So,
what'd you do from there?
From there, I went into franchise consulting.
Okay.
And it was a logical fit because I'd been a headhunter, so I'd been a recruiter. I had worked with both parties in a transaction.
Right.
And I'd also run now the full life cycle of being a franchisee.
Yeah.
And I was also fortunate enough to stay on for a bit longer within Express to learn about franchise development from a great guy, Art Coley, who taught me all the ins and outs of franchise development. So I did that for a couple of years, but I will tell you what I missed was being back in the C-suite.
Yeah.
I missed impacting business. I missed the action.
Yeah.
I missed impacting businesses and developing those relationships and getting out there again and getting my hands dirty.
You know, it's funny. If you don't know Chris Lopez beyond just the 6 here, you need to know him, especially if you are a business owner or somebody that's got P&L responsibility or expense management responsibility. The reason I say that is because you bring this really unique blend of empathy because you've run your own business, built it, sold it. You can have a conversation just as effectively with somebody in the C-suite as you can with somebody on the ground level of a company, which is something I love about you. I think it's a tremendous quality. And so folks that are out there that are looking for some guidance from somebody that sat in the chair that they've sat in before, you're the perfect person to call. I have a lot of empathy, as I know you do, for the folks that have that responsibility.
Absolutely.
What do you see as some of the challenges and why some of the things that you tackle with your team on a daily basis don't get taken care of as effectively as they could be?
Great question. I look at the business I'm in now with Schooley Mitchell as right business at the right time. Mm-hmm. I think back to the startup I was in, even in the Inexpress business that I ran in franchise consulting, and I do think in business you have some blinders.
Right.
And you don't know you have the blinders until that third party, as we've talked about.
We talked about it off camera, right?
Yeah. And so, being able to position myself to help give more clarity, and peace of mind to other business owners about the stuff they don't know is happening in the business.
Sure.
Is what Schooley Mitchell's all about. It's all about reducing cost. It's all about restructuring pricing in the contracts they have with their vendors. And we have visibility on what that should look like.
Yeah, see, that's one of the things, and we talked about it off camera. One of the things that I love about how you approach it is you're looking at it from the perspective of the person that's actually got the responsibility for making these decisions. And a lot of the challenges that we see businesses face is a lack of resources, whether it's time, whether it's the human resources, they just don't have enough people to look at stuff, or they don't have the experience to cut through all the clutter and the legalese of these ridiculous contracts and agreements that these vendors have. And so you and your team have the ability to sift through those challenges far more efficiently and effectively than somebody that's actually involved in running the day-to-day operations. And so that third-party perspective that you bring, I think, is really the muscle behind SMI and really what you do.
It is.
Talk to me just in terms of what you see that's most exciting for you. What kind of industries are you focused on right now as potential clients and whatnot?
Yeah, so our focus tends to be in 3, soon to be 4 categories.
Okay.
So it's telecommunications. So it's how our clients are engaging with other branches, their customers, anybody on the outside. So it's everything telecom.
So multiple locations.
Absolutely.
Right? Intricate in terms of the the setups and whatnot. The bill, by the way, if you ever tried to go through a telephone bill, for God's sakes, these days it's impossible. The fees and whatnot that are associated with it. And that's something you sift through, right?
That's a really good point, because when you do look at whether it's a phone bill or a shipping statement or a merchant services statement, it is a maze of pricing and fees, and nobody can make heads or tails.
I start to sweat. It was like being back in college for that full year that I was there.
Right.
Taking a test and not knowing any of the answers.
Right.
Double D's getting a good laugh out of this right now because he knows my story. But it makes us all feel foolish, right? And it really shouldn't. If you're a controller or an office manager or a business owner and you can't wrap your head around that stuff, you're not the Lone Ranger. And that's why it's such a great tool, a person like you or a team like you have, to call upon, ultimately.
Yeah, and a good example is, when you talk about FedEx, and we've had a laugh about this, when you absolutely positively have to have it there overnight, and sometimes it doesn't get there overnight.
Absolutely, we talked about that.
Yeah, I mean, clients all around, they don't realize that you're entitled to a refund.
Yeah.
But to have the time and the team to go through all of that.
It's the biggest challenge in small and mid-cap businesses that are out there is we just don't have the resources available. Right. And quite honestly, it's not something that they want to focus their time on, ultimately. We talked about before, driving revenue. Most businesses that you're working with at this point, they've got the revenue machine going. They've got to keep it going, ultimately. And that's what they tend to focus on. The expense side kind of gets pushed to the side as long as revenues exceed expenses.
That's right. That's right.
And that's a general rule of thumb. Talk in terms of the experiences that you've had with your team in terms of saving companies money on that light shipping expense. It's really overnight packages and stuff along those lines,
it is.
Correct?
It's all small package shipping. So there's the one element of it, which is, we refer to it as billing error recovery. So we find the mistakes. You'd be shocked at how many we find. And we get that money put back into the client's bank account.
Right.
The other part of it, of the equation, though, is identifying where there's opportunity to reduce the price structure.
Right.
And that comes by virtue of 40 years in business. I think upwards of 19,000 clients now.
Wow. Okay. And they know what questions to ask.
They do.
And what areas to attack. Right.
And you can't ignore also this thing called data analytics.
Wow.
We know what the pricing should be. Based on their spend and what they do, and we also understand those fees that should be passed through.
Right.
So, having a team like that, especially with 6 programmers on staff and a whole production crew that can take all of my clients' information and be able to process that and deliver, a value report, it's incredible.
Monumental. We talked also about merchant processing, credit card fees, etc. Your team does a tremendous job of weeding through that minefield, if you will. You had a recent experience, we don't have to name a client, but you had a recent experience with a client who thought that they had a deal in place with a particular processing vendor. And what happened?
So in that situation, it was a business that, and not uncommon, Sandy, but probably a little bit skeptical about our ability to impact.
Sure.
We've gone down this path before, and what we uncovered was, in the course of analyzing the pricing structure, was that the client believed that they were being priced based on the discussion they had last year. Essentially, the pricing never got put in place.
So they were overpaying.
They were overpaying, not even on their radar.
Wow.
And so a pleasant surprise, because that is the billing error recovery side of it.
Yeah.
That's the refund.
So there's a clawback aspect to it, which is great. And then and obviously a savings going forward. But didn't you tell me that you identified even greater savings than they were offered the year prior?
We did.
Yeah.
So there's room to move the needle in terms of their day-to-day pricing.
And I love that, because as a business owner, it's one of the things that I struggle with too. Is I just don't know what to ask or where to look, and having somebody I can go to.
Know what you don't know.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Listen, if you're a business owner today, and you're out there, and we're all looking to do more with less people, do more with more time invested, but it never seems to be enough. Picking up the phone and reaching out to me or to you to get in touch with a guy like Chris Lopez, I think is a smart decision. Any advice or relative experience for business owners that are trying to tackle this on their own and not succeeding?
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult to do on your own. And it's difficult, Sandy, for the reason we talked about. You're so focused on your core business.
Yeah.
Invariably you've got those blinders on. You don't have the time, the tools, the data to really impact this the way that a third party can.
Yeah. So you have multiple clients leveraging, your team, your single team in the home office. I think about the CFOs, the controllers, and office managers all the time. What tends to happen, and I see, is they're not only doing the job that they were brought on to do, but very often I see what we call like scope creep. The scope of their responsibility continues just to get wider and wider and wider, and they've got less and less time to do what their primary role is in the first place. And so while it's really never an exposure or an indictment of them, it's really you act as an extension of their office, correct?
Correct. And sometimes I do get a feeling, Sandy, that there's some concern that maybe we'll uncover too much.
Right.
In terms of the savings.
No, I would get that. That would make sense.
Yeah, and I think that's very common.
Yeah.
The one thing I try to make sure my clients understand, whether it's a CFO, controller, the CEO, whomever, is that my job is to make you look good.
Yeah.
My job is this. You get all the credit here.
Absolutely.
That's what it's all about.
And it should be that way.
It should be that way.
If they're smart enough and have the courage to bring you in the first place to say, hey, listen, we just don't get our arms around every single thing. And by the way, nobody does. There's no business out there that gets it all right. And that's why I think a service like yours is invaluable. I think a partnership that you bring to the table is invaluable. I think you coming in with the perspective of somebody that's owned, operated, successfully sold businesses in the past, comes in with a completely different perspective than just some person knocking on the door that says, I can do this for you. Right. Because there's a parade of those folks out there. I think what you bring to the table is somebody that has a vested interest in your client's success, in their team's success, and helping them get better at what they do in terms of expense management every single day. Is that a fair way to put it?
It is. I look at this as a partnership. I'm not another vendor. We're not affiliated with anyone.
Right. It's a long-term relationship.
It's a long-term relationship.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stop when we come back with the first recommendations. It's a constant look at how they're operating to claw back more in other areas.
Yeah.
And if it's outside the scope of what I do, I want to be able to connect them to people that can help.
Yeah. It's funny. I see there's a lot of C-suite positions out there for CROs, the Chief Revenue Officers. And I'm waiting for the CEO, but not the Chief Executive Officer, the Chief Expense Officer that's out there, because that's the role that the Revenue Officer very often assumes, but they've been bombarded with so many other things that they're responsible for that, as I said, you become a great extension of their team in their office. How can people get in touch with you?
And get in touch with me via LinkedIn.
Okay.
Also at the Schooley Mitchell website. So all the information is on www.schooleymitchell.com.
Okay, great.
And my cell phone, 760-470-2516.
And he picks up the phone, by the way. I will tell you that. He doesn't give you the direct to voicemail unless he's doing something like this with me or he's with a client. But as a matter of fact, you can go right below in the comment section and drop me a comment. You can shoot me a direct message, a text message, phone call, email. Makes no difference. I'll always be able to put you in touch with Chris, and I proudly do it because I got a ton of confidence in terms of how he conducts himself. As I said when we first started the podcast, you made an impression on me from the first time that I met you. I just knew you had a presence about you. When I learned more about your story, I was excited to have a chance to get to know you. I'm so happy and thankful that you reached out to me. Like, that was tremendous. And so listen, as we close out this segment on the 6th, remember, subscribe, share, rate, review. That stuff is critically important to us. We can continue to bring you great stories from incredible people like Chris every single day. We'll meet you wherever you are on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Catch us on YouTube. In the meantime, this is Sandy Cerami coming to you from Bakari Grill over in Washington Township, New Jersey on the 6th. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, Sandy.